Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Fortitude, the show that delves into the lives of those who face and overcome adversity. Today, we're joined by a truly remarkable guest, Tim Kennedy, whose day began as intensely as he lives his life. Yes, just before our conversation, Tim wrapped up a training session, and in a true warrior fashion, he managed to sustain a head injury. Yet, here he is, bloodied and resolute, ready to share his life's lessons with us, even receiving stitches immediately after our conversation. Tim Kennedy is not only a decorated former Green Beret and Special Forces sniper, but also a renowned mixed martial artist who has competed at the highest levels of the UFC. Beyond his combat and athletic achievements, he is a fervent advocate for veterans' welfare and emergency preparedness, a successful businessman, and even builds schools to offer a new way to educate children. During our talk, Tim emphasized the vital role of education in fostering a free and critical spirit among children, the fine balance between self-confidence and humility, and how the atrocities of war can shatter a man from within. He explained how daily actions, routine, and discipline can forge meaning and assist those who have witnessed horrors in rebuilding their lives, preventing them from becoming prisoners of their traumas. For those interested in exploring Tim's philosophies further, his book, Scars and Stripes, recently translated into French, Des plaies et des bosses, is a profound read. It not only delves into his life's adventures and challenges, but also reflects, with a rare honesty, on the lessons learned from the front lines to everyday life. Join us for an unforgettable time as we explore the robust philosophies and spirited anecdotes of a man who trains relentlessly at 44 years old, respects his engagements no matter the circumstances, and believes that a head wound is no reason to shy away from a deep dive with a French podcaster into adversity, resilience, and life philosophy. Before we start, of course, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this with me. I don't believe you ever did a podcast in France before.
Yeah, so my book just came out in France 2 months ago.
Yeah,
and I did a bunch of media, but I don't think I did any podcasts. No.
So it's an honor for me to be the first one. Thank you very much. First, how is Normandy?
Man, I love Normandy. It is beautiful. I swam in the water every single day, and the people are so patriotic, and they clearly share a lot of my values, and like they have a lot of the characteristics that I aspire to have. France is a strange place right now. It's if you fly the French flag, it's almost considered taboo because it's kind of nationalism, or which is also odd because France has such a beautiful, rich culture and such a beautiful history that especially around D-Day, when we're celebrating the liberation of a nation and ultimately a continent, I think it's an appropriate time to celebrate. It's an appropriate time to be patriotic. It's appropriate time to demonstrate why we are different than the fascists and the tyrannical regimes that have existed in the past. So but I love Normandy. It's beautiful.
But it's interesting what you point out, because we have exactly the same age, huh? But I can't get my head around why it's such a problem in France today to be patriotic. Exactly as you said, if you're carrying around the flag, or if you say you love your country and everything, it's a bit frowned upon. And I just don't understand why. It's really weird. But it's only for sports that actually people allow themselves fully to be patriotic. But for any other reason, it's a bit more complicated. I don't understand. I'm very patriotic. I assume it totally. I don't care what people think. We have a great history. We have, an amazing country. Yeah, it's kind of weird, but it's great that in Normandy, at least during those events, people let go and freely show appreciation, show the love of the country, the love of the allies on a general basis as well. It's quite amazing how warm the welcome was, I believe, for you guys over there.
Oh yeah, it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming. The people were just hugging soldiers. And when I was wearing a World War II uniform, there were people that would just grab you in the street and hug you. So it was overwhelming. Just man, what a great event. What a great time to celebrate, and what a wonderful, beautiful people.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And it's important that we keep this, from my point of view, this very particular and strong bond between our two countries. We have a long shared history and we share a lot of values. Well, this being said, I have a bit of a challenge for you right now because I know you quite well, but you have to introduce yourself to the French people that are actually will be listening to this podcast and that maybe never heard about you. Can you just summarize your journey and yeah, the highlights of your life? And of course, we're gonna dive a little bit more in the deep of it later on. But can you just introduce yourself to people that don't know you and don't know what is a Green Beret, don't know what is the UFC? So that's a bit of a challenge,
Yeah,
but I'm sure you can do that very well.
yeah. It's kind of a mess. It's kind of a lot. So I
Yeah, I know.
uh, So I'm currently a Special Forces Master Sergeant. The U.S. Army Special Forces are called the Green Berets. I have been a career military person for almost 20 years now. Deployments to Iraq, to Afghanistan, all over Africa. I've worked actually multiple times with French Special Operations in Africa and in Afghanistan. I also was just in France working with GIGN in a few months ago, and
Yeah, I've seen
I
that.
was very impressed. What an incredible organization! Another beautiful culture that's rich with the heritage of the French people and how much they kind of celebrate and take pride in making sure that they're one of the most elite units on the planet. While I have been in special forces, I also was fighting professionally in the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And I was a professional fighter for 17 years. I fought for the world title a couple of different times. And, the so I had a kind of crazy career in the military. Obviously, I was during my time in Iraq and Afghanistan. It was during the peak war, so it was the very heavy fighting. And then, my time in the UFC was, I think, kind of the most exciting period of time with the most marquee fighters. My coaches like Chuck Liddell, and fighting guys like Robbie Lawler, Michael Bisping.
Well, yeah, thank you for that. So, personally, I got to know you. First time I saw you was at Strike Force because I'm a combat sport fan. I've always been. I followed the UFC since the beginning. So I discovered you on Strike Force, then the UFC. Then I'm a big Joko Willing fan. So I heard you on the Joko podcast, then on Joe Rogan as well. I figured there was something a bit more than just the fighter. And naturally, when your book came out, I think it came out 2 years ago in the US. Um,
That's right.
I, yeah. So I bought it at the time and I read it in English. I'm very fond of biographies. As your friend Joe Rogan would put it, I'm a student of human success. And I must admit that your book was a big surprise, a very positive, good surprise for me because I was not expecting what I found in your book. And for several reasons. The first one was I rarely read an autobiography that was that genuine and honest. We'll get into the details, but with everything you've done in your life, it could be easy for you to portray as a Marvel superhero, but you did a very unique job with your book because when we're done reading it, we say to ourselves, or at least I did, this guy is as human as one can be. The other thing that really stands out in your book, when we start reading about your life, the beginning, your childhood, and your young adulthood, we really have the impression of something really, the word that comes to me, it's very raw. As your life goes on and as we read about your life, we see how your choices, but also what life threw at you, shaped the man you are today. To start with, I want to go with the education, because I know it's something that is really, really important for you. And I would like you to tell us a little bit more how this very unique education you had from your parents influence the beginning of your life, of course, but the rest of your life as well. Because my understanding is that you were homeschooled. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I kind of had the perfect opportunity to be raised in a very abnormal home. My dad was a law enforcement officer that was hunting drug dealers and drug manufacturers and drug distributors as an undercover police officer. And my mom was, a kind of a woman of culture. She actually reminds me of a French cultured woman that's well traveled, it's well read, appreciates the arts, fine foods, culinary. So there's a kind of a stark contrast in my life between my mom and my dad. And I only went to proper school for a couple of years before my parents decided to homeschool myself, my older brother, and my younger sister. We received kind of all of our primary education at home before we went on to college. And I, I wouldn't change anything. If I could go back in time, I think it was it's something that's happening more and more in the United States where, the families are viewing the responsibility of educating their children as their own responsibility and not the responsibility of anyone else, like, the government school system or private schools. And that's, what my parents subscribed to. And because of that, we were able to travel, all over the world and all over the United States and, go over to America. Is a gigantic place. It's very difficult for people in Europe to understand just how big America
That's true.
is
Yeah,
and
that's
how
true.
many different cultures there are. You can fit about 6 different European countries inside of just Texas alone, where I live. And if you're going to go from Florida to California or New York to Washington, you're driving through 5, 6, 7 different cultures that would seem like it'd be 5, 6, 7 different countries. But you're still in the United States. But because we were homeschooled, we were able to go and kind of experience all of this gigantic country and learn in a very unique way.
And what I read was their parents trying to cultivate his rebellion by immersing him in culture, because
Yeah,
you were hard
the
to handle. Is that
yeah,
correct?
yeah, that's true. Um, but I think any free or any free society or every sovereign idea has to be rooted in information. And this is what my parents believed, and this is the approach that they took. Was they wanted us to be critical thinkers. They wanted us to be free thinkers. They wanted us to be collaborative and this kind of Socratic argumentative brain where we could look at a problem and try to find a unique solution that most people that were all educated the same wouldn't think of. So because I was such a handful, they just kept me busy. They kept me busy with information. They kept me busy with culture, and they kept me busy with history.
When we read your book, you write a lot of examples of times where when you were young, where you had it your own way. You were not easy to control. You made your own decisions. You were very free in your mind, and it was difficult to impose anything on you. So what I hear from you now is that, can we say that what your parents cultivated in terms of, as you say, information, critical spirit, and all that, fueled free state of mind that caused you some problems at the same time? So my question is, how can you find a proper balance between giving your kids this sense of critic, of knowing what is best for him, not necessarily believing everything that he reads or hear, and the fact to be able to adapt to an organization, for example, to a job, to following orders or instructions for an employer. Uh, it's pretty hard to get the right balance, don't you think?
I don't think so. I think if you develop first, you give them values, you give them integrity, you give them purpose, direction, motivation, and then you empower them with the ability to think for themselves. If you're so one sided that if you're going to believe anything that you read, and you hand me Hitler's Mein Kampf and I read it and then I believe it because I'm unable to critically think, like how vulnerable and how susceptible is a society that can't think freely. But inversely, you have somebody that is educated, you have somebody that is a free thinker, you have somebody that has a sovereign mind, then you can give them information and they can critically assess the information that's in it and to determine off of their own personal values the validity of these ideas. And then they can take something that is ludicrous, like fascism, and throw it in the trash, throw it in the toilet, and know that it has no place in a civilized society. But if they're not free thinkers, then they're vulnerable to being influenced by bad ideas. This is why terrorist organizations recruit the uneducated. This is why gangs go and look for young, poor, uneducated kids in poor areas, because those kids are so desperate and they've never had the opportunity to think freely.
Today, you're actually building schools, your own schools.
Yeah, that's the ideas of our school, Apogee. They're not my ideas. These ideas are thousands of years old. We take a Socratic approach to education, and it's project-based learning. So, Matt Boudreau, who is the president, we both have seen firsthand the failures of the American education system, and we're just trying to do something different. And we're trying to provide parents with other resources about how to educate their children.
Can you give us a description on how you do it differently?
Yeah, the basic premise around Socratic education is that you have the kids in the classroom are the ones that are in charge. There's not a teacher, but rather there's a guide. The guide's job is to direct conversations. The guide's job is to create opportunities for these kids to debate, to struggle, to fail. Of course, they're getting math, they're getting science, they're getting chemistry, they're getting history, they're getting English. But the delivery system isn't a bunch of kids sitting like lemmings in a classroom behind a desk, using a piece of paper, using a pencil, and watching a whiteboard. We want the kids moving. We want the kids, kind of struggling to find answers and trying to figure out which questions they need to ask to get the right solutions. So it's very entrepreneurial minded. We are, we'll ask a question, and without providing any answers, the kids have to navigate which questions they have to ask to find the solutions out themselves. It's a dynamically different approach to the kind of factory conveyor belt school system where these kids just are given all of the tools to take a test, and that's all. That's their metric of success is their performance on these standardized tests. We want these kids that, of course, can go and take a test and perform exemplary, but more importantly, they're able to critically think for themselves. They're able to struggle to find their own answers, and in kind of a day-to-day schedule in our school, you're going to see very little time of these beautiful minds sitting behind desks looking at a dry erase board.
So we just talked about what I consider it being the first layer of your construction as a man is the education you got from your parents, and we get to understand a little bit more how free in your mind you were from the beginning, and it explains a lot of things from what happens afterwards. And the second layer is is combat sports. So my understanding is your dad got you to start boxing and jiu-jitsu. Is that correct? Or was it your idea, your inspiration?
I mean, I was interested in it. As young as little as I can remember, I've always loved martial arts. But my dad, I think, recognizing that I was going to be a handful and that I needed structure and I needed discipline, he wisely, enrolled me in, first it was Shotokan karate at the local rec center, and then it was Japanese jiu-jitsu. Then it was wrestling. It was kind of, there's just this constant um, search for the right martial art for me.
Am I correct if I say that both the confidence that your parents' education gave you and the confidence you gain from practicing martial arts or combat sports, in a sense, you came up overconfident in a way? If I jump right away to the army part of your biography, if I quote, for example, your book, you're in Iraq, you're running operations, you're already in the special forces, and one day you got left behind. All the team went out, and you stayed behind. And after they came back, you got to your officer, and you said, I quote, John, I'm the best shot. I'm the most physically fit, and I dominated the last mission. I should have been the first to go, not the first to get pulled. I want to be treated fairly. I know I'm an asset to this team. I finished my speech, not complete. John, who's your commanding officer, just looks at me for a long time, his head rolling from side to side, cracking his old man neck, but his eyes never leaving mine. Go grab your boxing gloves and meet me in the gym, and we will hash this out, the crazy bastard says. Can you tell us what happened afterwards and how you link this to what everything we just said about how you were raised, being very confident and maybe feeling a bit, I don't know, overconfident? What happened after this event? This short
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah. Um, I mean, young men are always overconfident. They almost to a point of thinking that they are invincible, and it's no different with me. I was young, I was capable, and I thought very highly of myself. I didn't have humility that kind of comes from making a lot of mistakes. I had made a lot of mistakes, but the humility that came with those mistakes, I don't, I'm still learning today. Um, After John told me go get the boxing gloves, the entire team met me down in the tent, and I had to box and fight every single guy on my team 2 times through. The lesson that they're trying to teach me is that the team is only as strong as the weakest link. I should be, if I am a strong link, I should be strong for the team, not for myself. And it was a very embarrassing, humiliating lesson to learn, but it's one that is all too common with young men. Youth is wasted on the young, unfortunately, and I was a prime example of that.
Can we agree on the fact that what really, really, really made you the man you are today, a bit like the allegory of the sculpture I was mentioning earlier, is the life's hammer blows that you received, if I can put it this way. Because you don't hide anything from us when we read your book, and you had quite a lot of very difficult, harsh times. And the impression I got was that those harsh times really, really made you the man you are today. And first, you lost your best friend when you were 15 and he was 13. Is that correct? He in a car accident. And as you said in the book, that's really a milestone in your life because your world ended to start with, but moreover, you said my childhood is over. So basically what you say is that your childhood was over when you were 15 with this dramatic event.
Yeah, that's right. Man, I had a wonderful childhood. It was loving parents, amazing friends. I grew up in a beautiful place. But that day in December when Jared died, that was the beginning of the end of what it felt like to be a kid. The consequences of our decisions now rested solely on our shoulders. When you're a kid and you make a mistake, you have your parents to be there to absorb the failure. They're still going to put food on the table. They're still going to, make sure that you have a safe place to sleep. That's what loving parents do. But now when you're able to drive, when you're able to, get in fights, when you're able to drink, the consequences are yours. And, that's the beginning. That's the beginning of being an adult, is when the consequences exclusively rest on your shoulders.
There is this part in the book where you're a bit older than you tell us that you got two women pregnant very early in your life. You were going to have two kids very close, and you were what, 20 years old or something like that?
Yeah, that's right.
And at this point, that was a point where you lost a little bit the grip of your life, and this episode where you decide to go to the beach, you get naked, you get in the water, and it's almost a very biblical kind of episode, because when we start reading, we don't know if you want to, I don't know, be reborn or whatever. But as the book goes on, we understand that you're losing it, and probably you just want to drown because you can't live with yourself. Can you tell us a little bit more about this really, really, what I think was a very, very important moment in your life, a turning point?
Yeah, there's no conscious decision of like trying to kill myself. I felt alone. I felt desperate. And, I definitely wanted a baptism. I wanted a rebirth from, the consequences of my own decisions, wanting to start over, start new. And I didn't know how to do that. I was looking at all of these insurmountable problems ahead of me, and I didn't um, know where to start making right decisions. I didn't realize that it was just that simple. Of after making so many bad decisions, all you have to do to start changing the direction that you're headed is start making right decisions. Of course, you're going to have to deal with the consequences of your wrong decisions, of your bad decisions. So I took, looking for that baptism, looking for that rebirth. I took all my clothes off, hopped in the Pacific Ocean. I started swimming due west into the water. And I swam out into the fog, not knowing that I wouldn't be able to get back. And as I was sitting out there, I got trapped. I was sitting there in the fog, treading water, not knowing which way the shore was. The water's cold. It's a frightening, scary thing when you are about to apply a permanent decision to a temporary problem. And that's effectively what I did. I just sat there and treaded water, hoping that I could figure out which way to swim so I didn't drown.
But you were saved.
Yeah. The Coast Guard, which is like similar to the Navy, somebody had said that they saw me get in the water and the boat had gone out and found me. It was miraculous that they found me, but it was absolutely life-saving.
And even more than just saving your body that day from drowning, it's also what the Coast Guard told you.
The captain came up, his feet were hanging off the front of the boat. And, he's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And I give him a summary of all the decisions that I've made. And he was laughing at how bad my decisions were. And, he asked if I wanted to get on the boat. And I, of course, was like, "Yes, please. I would very much like to get out of this water. It's cold." And, he just tells me, if I'm going to give you this chance to get back up on this boat, you're going to have to treat your life moving forward with more respect and more regard. And than I had that day. So I had to sit there treading water and freezing cold water
and think about the decisions that I've made, and if I was going to start making good decisions moving forward.
It's great for you to share that, because a lot of people face this emotion of being pulled down by the weight of everything that was they did or didn't do in the past, and believing that everything is done, nothing can be undone, so therefore there's no reason to move on. And the fact of drawing a line on the sand and saying, okay, from this point forward, things are changing, or I decide that things are changing. And sometimes it seems a bit like theory, like it's not that easy, but what you're saying is it is actually that easy, just to decide one day that from now on, you change stuff and you make the right decisions. Would you say that it's that easy? Joko would say that.
Yeah, I do think it's that easy. I think, like a boat traveling in the ocean, it's heading in a wrong direction. And all you have to do is start at the helm, start making slight adjustments for the boat to start changing where it's going. And if you're living your life and you're headed directly towards an iceberg, all you have to do is start making these slight adjustments to get it fixed, and to not hit that iceberg. But everybody takes a step back and they're like, oh my gosh, where do I do? Where do I start? How do I fix this? Man, all you have to do is start making these little decisions to start changing the trajectory of your life to be better.
So if I get back to the book, there's this very, I mean, there are a lot of intense chapters, I must say, and intense episodes. What I thought was a really, really significant, again, turning point in your life and in your career, also as a soldier, was your tour in Afghanistan. This chapter that you named "The Valley of Death," which is mind-blowing in terms of what you actually went through. I read somewhere a journalist said that, I quote, "He rolled into a valley an arrogant and impetuous boy, and walked out of the same valley a humble and appreciative man." Can you tell us why, what happened there, and how it actually really, really, really changed you?
Yeah, when I got to Afghanistan, I had gotten back from Iraq. That tour in Iraq, we were with the best military units on the planet, and we had all of the resources to make sure that we were successful. We had just, we were part of a task force that killed the number one bad guy in all of Iraq. Then I went to Ranger School. Then I went to Sniper School. In my mind, crushed Ranger School. I'm honor graduate. And then I go to Sniper School. I graduate, and now I'm like a Special Forces sniper. I go to a new team, and yet again, I am thinking that I am the best in the world. And then I get to Afghanistan, and the Taliban does not care how good you think that you are, or any of the things that you bring. Like, you are going to have to fight the Taliban like they have been fighting for the past 1,000 years. And we went into this valley in Uruzgan, in an area of Afghanistan, and we were brutalized. We were heavily outnumbered, and the guys that we were fighting were well prepared to fight the American military. And I came out of that valley again humbled, again given lessons in life that were served brutally.
If you allow me to illustrate this with your book. So it's the chapter called "The Valley of Death." So you're in Afghanistan and you've been in firefights for like 3 days in a row. You're tired, you're hurt. A lot of people got hurt around you. So it's really, really a combination of difficulties, of hardship, and at one point you write the following: you do not want to hear women or children scream. You absolutely do not want to hear that. Yet that's what I hear. My soul churns inside. The helplessness tears me apart. I want to take that fucking grenade back so badly. I can hear kids screaming. They don't understand why this is happening to them. I can hear mothers screaming, mothers that are punctured by fragments of metal and can barely hold air in their lungs. Their screams are the sounds that only a parent can understand, of desperately wanting to help your children but not knowing what to do to help them, or in some cases, knowing it is too late to help them. Every scream tears me apart. After everything I've been through, I thought my soul was dead. I was as hollow as the thud of that grenade. I thought there was nothing left. It all comes fluting back. I am a raw nerve of emotion, and each sound coming from that room burns me worse than anything that has ever happened to me. Shame, horror, and guilt, and what I have just done envelopes me. I have seen this before in others as an EMT, the drunk drivers that had killed someone. They sat there on those streets' corners crying, trying to sort out in their heads the disparity between who they thought they were, a decent person, with what they had just done. Tell us what happened there, and I want also to hear you about how you actually dealt with it afterwards. Because I know you mentioned, I heard it on various podcasts, that you never went to see a shrink or you never did any therapy. How do you dealt with it? Because you had a very unique way to move on.
Well, I don't know if it's unique. I think it's something that people have been doing for thousands of years. When I were in Afghanistan, I started receiving machine gun fire from a window, and I threw a grenade through that window. And the terrorists are the worst. They hide behind civilians. They hide behind the innocent because they, just like Hamas and Hezbollah now, innocent people being hurt helps their cause as much as the success of the fighters against the people that they are fighting. So when I threw that grenade through that window that I was being shot from by a machine gun, there were innocent women and children that the terrorists had put in that room. And, we're in the middle of a fight. It's one of the worst moments that you can possibly imagine, where, there's gunfire, there's men screaming. The scream that you don't want is the screams of women and children. And this is how war is. It's just horrible. It's the worst. It's indescribable terror, and it's something that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. But that's where I was. We had, not only did we have to fight our way out of that valley, but once we got to the fire base, we had to fight our way from that fire base back through to get out once again. Me getting healthy, me getting right from the things that happened in war have been millions of little decisions. It's that I don't drink. It's that, I don't fight. It's that I don't smoke. It's that I don't, gamble. I don't, I make, just like I was saying about changing the direction of the boat. I just make little decisions that over time start positively affecting my life, and I'm able to deal with more. And that's the struggle, is to be able to make those little decisions.
Writing the book was helpful.
Yeah, I think so. It's anytime that you can process things, anytime that you can talk through and address and deal with. I didn't write the book for therapy in any way, shape, or form. I wrote the book because I know people fight, and I know that people struggle. And maybe them seeing that how I work through some of these things are, might help them in some way, shape, or form.
I heard on Modern Wisdom that it's Chris Williamson that mentioned that you were working on another book about resilience. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So can you tell me about it a bit, or is it like a top secret information?
No.
Because just for you to know, because I know you're not familiar with what I do and with the podcast, but I guess you figure it out a bit now, is the purpose of this podcast is to, through the journeys of my guest, to try to figure out what helps people be resilient, what helps people overcome obstacles, what helps people push their limits. We try to, share journeys, experiences, so that people that listen to us, and everybody is facing challenges that you just mentioned, try to, figure out what could help them and what could work with them. So when I heard that you were actually working on a book on resilience, of course I had to ask you, what is it about, and what are you putting into it, and when is it coming out?
Yeah, the book is titled The Purpose of Pain, and it will come out in 2025, so next year. And I believe through my life I have endured and experienced lots of pain, and I think a lot of people currently are avoiding pain. Pain for me has always been the catalyst for change. Pain for me has always been the thing. It was at that moment, experiencing this pain, that I was able to make an adjustment or make a course correction to fix something in my life. And that's and so, not that I'm celebrating that pain in my life, but I know that without pain I would never have change, and that's what I needed.
At this point, Tim had to stop our conversation because he needed to go to the hospital to get some stitches for his wound that he sustained just before we started recording at his training session. But I'm sure we'll do this again. I really, really strongly recommend you to buy his book, either in English or in French, Déplier les bosses. I will put all the references in the podcast information. Now I'll give back the mic to Tim for his goodbye.
I really appreciate you, and I appreciate everything that you guys that you stand for in this podcast. And I'm looking forward to having a chance to talk